It may seem that the striker market is not as clear-cut as it first seems. We've got to talk about Victor Osimhen amongst the chaos of Benjamin Sesko. We've got some midfielder and winger links to talk about as well in today's Arsenal transfer show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It's incredibly appreciated. Hope you had a fantastic Friday. I hope that your Saturday started very well indeed and you're looking ahead to a very good weekend as well. I very much enjoyed myself yesterday. Didn't enjoy myself too much. Feeling not bad, to be fair. You get over that grogginess in the morning and you're like, just wake up like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do today, but I'm all right. Once you get up and you move and you're able to get the blood flowing a little bit, you feel fine. So I'm feeling good, feeling fresh. Good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Thank you so much for all of you for tuning in. Good morning to Arasilki and Sean and Franklin, Peter, Barry T, Damien, Tabani, Stephen, Jose, Steve, Perez, Maximius, Knowledge, Paul, Jesus. The account's called Jesus My Saviour, John 14:6. But you just see Jesus these days and you're like, Jesus. Martin, Amesy, Tom, Paul, Kaiser, Temi, Pat, Jack Reeves, Stevie, and plenty more of you guys and girls. Thank you to you all for tuning in. Very much appreciate your time. Shall we jump in? We should, but I should also remind you to, of course, drop a press on that like button. It does help us to reach our challenge of 1,000 likes every single day. Thank you so much, as always, for the support. It's extremely humbling. And if you could subscribe as well, you join a TGT family that is now on closing into at least its 1,000th morning episode. We never sleep, we never stop. So keep following us, keep supporting us, and thank you for it. Right, we got a few stories today. We start with kind of putting a pin, if you like, in any suggestions that Lautaro Martinez could indeed be the striker that Arsenal should go with, because suggestions are, as I have been saying on the channel for some time, that the expectation was, as always, that he would be signing a brand new contract with Inter Milan. And that is expected now to happen. Fabrizio Romano saying yesterday that the Argentinian striker will indeed be signing that brand new deal with Inter to take him through the peak years of his career, putting to bed any potential stories that a club like Arsenal or anybody else will indeed be going for Lautaro Martinez. So, yes, no indication that Arsenal will be looking at that whatsoever, because he will be staying with Inter moving forwards. However, a player that is supposedly on Arsenal's radar, according to Dutch outlet HBVL, they claim that Arsenal are said to be among the sides to have made an approach for Johan Bakayoko, the PSV winger, of course, that played against Arsenal in the Champions League group stage this season. He is said to be of interest to the club. Now 21 years of age and a Belgian international. He scored 12 goals and got 9 assists in 33 Eredivisie matches, scored 14 goals and 14 assists in 48 all competitions appearances as well, which is very impressive indeed. So he's very much that stylistic, technical, fast, take players on, and certainly puts in the work on that right-hand side. So if Arsenal wanted a competitive option for Saka, we'd be subbing. I was just about to say this, and Miles Cannon's stolen my thunder a bit. It says, imagine taking Bukayo off and bringing in Bakayoko. Indeed, the names are very similar, and he would certainly add plenty of depth and quality and speed and style, I think, to Arsenal's right-hand side. So one to keep an eye on. And I think he's certainly one of the winger options that would make a lot of sense for Arsenal in this summer transfer window. There is still said, according to Mark, I think it was from the Eye, actually, Mark Douglas reporting this story, that Arsenal are amongst the teams as well that remain somewhat interested in Amadou Onana. We know that there was interest from Arsenal in January, although that never really progressed into anything too much concrete. But there is suggestions that Arsenal's interest does remain in the Belgian international. But what is interesting about Onana, of course, is the Everton situation. Everton, of course, are a side that are continually under somewhat scrutiny financially and have already been punished because of profit and scalability regulation breaches. But Onana is seen as one of those players that could earn them quite a bit of money. The problem that Everton has got is that they actually spent quite a lot of money on him. It was upwards of £30 million that they paid to Lille to land the Belgian international. And that obviously means that any money they make is offset by that significant transfer fee. So they'll be looking to maximise any sale to as much as they can, and they won't be going anywhere close to that £34 million, you would think, to try and maximise the impact on their accounting books. But he does remain a very good Premier League proven player. However, I still think that I struggle to look at Onana as the preferred midfield option for me. I think I want somebody more technical. I think I want somebody that's more attacking even, because I still think for me, I see Rice being the 6. I know some of you guys, quite rightfully, because he's very good at it, can see Rice being the 8 moving forwards. I'd quite like Arsenal to go for somebody that's more of a box-to-box midfielder and push Rice back more into the number 6 position, become something of our Rodri. And I'd like Arsenal to go for that more attacking box-to-box type midfielder, or, of course, have the scope to see Nwaneri and Odegaard potentially play together in the future if that's something that we could do. But in which case, then Onana perhaps would be a better signing, because you could have him as a rotational figure with Rice, or, a midfield of Rice, Onana, and Odegaard. Or Nwaneri could work potentially in the future too. But Onana on Arsenal's radar, as he is a number of other clubs as well. However, our headline story of the day, Fabrizio Romano speaking about the prospect of Victor Osimhen and him potentially making a switch to any side over the course of this window. He said every day we have different rumours. One day it's Sesko, one day it's Osimhen, one day it's Gyökeres, and one day it's this, and one day it's that. Let Arsenal work. They are discussing internally about the striker, considering all the options they have, and they will decide what they want to do, also based on the budget. Arsenal don't want to spend completely crazy money. They want to spend smart money on the striker, and this is why Arsenal haven't decided anything at all on Victor Osimhen or any target yet. It will be soon. He continues by saying Chelsea have no intention to go for Victor Osimhen in the summer transfer window. This is what I'm understanding. The expectation for Osimhen is still to leave Napoli, so keep an eye on potentially other clubs interested in Osimhen. Now, of course, we know that Osimhen would be extremely expensive for any club that comes in, and we, as Fabrizio agrees, as we've talked about and as I have mentioned and understand on the channel as well, is that there is not an expectation that Arsenal will be spending a massive, massive fee on a player unless, and it isn't big unless there are serious amounts of sales for significant prices for Arsenal. There isn't that expectation that will happen. But it seems that there is an interest that remains in Osimhen moving forwards, but it is difficult to see Arsenal being the club that ends up signing the Nigerian striker, just because the price tag that, of course, will be involved in any potential deal for him is just so out of the realms of anything sensible. And as we talked about on yesterday's show, the numbers don't, for me, indicate that he would be the right player to go for. I have watched my fair amount of Osimhen, nowhere near as much as maybe some experts, but I don't see enough, and I certainly don't take in the numbers well enough to suggest that he is the guy, because he's only had one 20-goal plus season. His finishing numbers aren't better than Havertz, and only the ones, the non-penalty XG, that are like 0.2 per 90. Across, I think, the whole season, not even per 90, are just are better. So it doesn't, for me, it just doesn't make too much sense for Arsenal to go 100 million plus on a player that doesn't push the needle enough for us, especially when you can go for a player like Sesko, who actually does, to a degree, push our needle depth-wise, and potentially in the future as well, with his numbers being very impressive and for significantly less than what it would cost to bring in Osimhen. But that's the latest. And of course, the latest competition that you can win is a signed and framed Martin Odegaard's Arsenal shirt. Make sure you go to the Football Prizes website to get involved in that latest competition. Of course, it is UK only. Best of luck to all of those that get involved. I'd love to hear that one of you have been successful. I can tell you that of the tickets that were on sale, only less than half actually are now left. So don't waste your time. Go to the link down in the description, and best of luck to all of you that are involved. Well, let's go to part 2 and your questions then right after this. Okay, let's jump into the chat box, shall we, and tackle some of your thoughts and feelings and questions and queries. Right, Ben says, I don't think a lot of people are realizing the importance of getting the right guy to lead our future. Get the right one, and we're on our way to sustained glory. Get it wrong, and it's still, of course, up in the air. And that can go for any position. You know, it's not just striker, of course. It can go for any potential role in the team that Arsenal might be looking to sign. If you get the wrong guy, it can set you back. Thankfully, under Mikel Arteta and Edu and our recruitment team as a whole, what we've done is we've managed to be very successful in the market, and we've built a squad that has been able to challenge successfully for 2 years, and there's an expectation we'll challenge for a third year straight, and that has been because of what we've done in the market. It's not been perfect. There's been some mistakes, like Fabio Vieira, who is probably our most expensive transfer mistake thus far. Could he still prove that he turns out to be a good signing? Potentially, but the jury is still very much out on him, and he could even leave, of course, this summer and cement that view that it was not necessarily a good signing, in which case we'll try and get as much money as we can if we were to sell him. But outside of Fabio Vieira, we are struggling really in terms of, you know, big money signings that we've made. Arteta has never missed on a 50 million plus signing at all. You know, you look at the players that we've signed for that amount of money: Ben White, Havertz, Rice. You know, we're not missing on these guys that we're spending on the big fees. The next one that could be above 50 million, it appears to be the most likely, is Benjamin Sesko at this moment in time. But that is going to be more of a long-term project with some, of course, plenty of potential to have an impact in the immediate future as well, because his level is significantly, for me at least, higher than that of Nketiah. Alejandro in the chat, thank you so much for the kind donation. Says, my first live show is midnight in the west of the United States. Are there any solid links to Kudus, Fofana, Diomande and Kalliolu? Kudus, of course, is a player that Arsenal had interest in when he was at Ajax. It's not necessarily as prominent at the moment. I think there's certainly a player that I'd love to see Arsenal go for. There were rumours this morning that Liverpool see him maybe as the Mohamed Salah replacement in the future. Fofana, cheap player, 20 to 30 million pounds, around that figure, is going to leave Monaco this season from the sounds of things, or this summer. I'd love Arsenal to go for him. I think he'd be a really good, sensible financial option for Arsenal to go for in their midfield. Diomande, a more expensive defender at Sporting at the moment. You know, you're looking upwards of 50, 60 million pounds potentially to land Diomande, Ivory Coast International, or Cote d'Ivoire International. Good, progressive player, comfortable on the ball, would add serious quality depth to our centre-half options. Would like to see him at Arsenal, but likelihood, again, it's gone quite quiet on that front. And lastly, Kalliolu. There was a lot of noise previously, Turkish outlets suggesting that Arsenal had even had an offer rejected. I was told that that was a little bit wide of the mark, and that the interest is not necessarily as prominent as what was being claimed by those Turkish sources. So it's gone pretty quiet on that front. That's not to say that there isn't interest in Kalliolu. There potentially is, but it's nowhere near as advanced as what was being suggested from what I understand. So he could still be a player that we go for, but obviously there's these links at the moment to the finals defender. What's his name? The first name is exceptionally hard to to pronounce. The left back, it's Hartman, I think. I think it's Hartman. Is the guy that we've obviously been linked to. Kilinci Hartman is also being linked, but he is out currently with a serious knee injury that will see him miss, I think, the start of the season, or pretty far into the start of the season as well. So that doesn't necessarily make too much sense either, that one at the moment. But yeah, Robert says, I like Turkish sources. Just not happens to be the transfer kind of Turkish sources. Walk says, how much would Bakayoko cost? Also, I hate you because my Nando's order has increased due to the chocolate cake, which I have to buy. My wife calls it Costa-lot cake. Love the show. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Walk. And I apologise for your bank account's impact, but you can't say it's not worth it, because it's a glorious chocolate cake. Anyway, Bakayoko, interesting question about how much he might cost. He's currently valued on transfer marks at 45 million euros, so about 38 million pounds. I think that's probably what it would cost, to be fair, 35 to 40 million pounds to get Bakayoko through the door. In terms of his contract, of what length of contract, it runs out in 2026. So he's still got 2 years left on his current deal. And at 21 years of age, obviously, is a very good age bracket for the player too. So doesn't look likely that you'll be playing loads and loads, but I don't know how much the interest is there that we would be pursuing that at this moment in time. Let's go to Ollie says, hi Tom, would you take Walcott back as a coach? I have absolutely no idea what Walcott's coaching background is like, Ollie. So it's impossible for me to know whether or not that'd be the right move. I don't know if he's doing his coaching badges as hope to get into coaching at Arsenal, and in which case you have to look at it on the merit of their coaching rather than their history with the club, of course, as well. Matt says, not football related, but what camera do you use? It's a Sony ZX4, I think. I think that's the ZX. Is it a ZX4? Sony ZX4 or a ZX E10? Might be the E10. I'm not an expert. I think it's the ZV-E10. If that's any help to you at all, it's known as kind of their main vlogging camera. So that's the camera that we use, which is then there's loads of cables that you can't see behind, which allows it to stream up to StreamYard as well. RD says Nketiah is 25 and earning 100 grand a week. Why is our expectations so low for him? He disappeared after October. I mean, 100 grand a week for a 25-year-old at a club like Arsenal in the Premier League is pretty standard. I think people lean far too much on Nketiah's wage. It's very normal for a striker at Arsenal at 24, 25 years of age who's played as many minutes as he has. He's played over 100 appearances for Arsenal, so it's not unlikely that he'd be on that amount of money. Our expectations being low, of course, comes from what we've seen, more than anything else, with respect that we've not seen enough to suggest that Nketiah is the right player for us moving forwards in that striker position, but that he probably is for another Premier League side where he can get more minutes to start as well. Amadou Onana says, all the fans saying Sesko is a risk. I remember Anelka, Henry, Bergkamp, Vieira, Pires, Ljungberg, etc., and they are all risks. I mean, there's an element of risk with every signing that you make, of course. Declan Rice even came with a certain amount of risk, basically because of the transfer fee that we paid. Thankfully, he has come good. And I think that if you're not convinced by Arsenal's recruitment right now, you never will be. Maybe not until we win a Premier League title. But if you're not convinced at this point, I mean, it's too late to jump on the train for me now. You should be on it already. And if you're not, I really don't know beyond them winning the league with a team that would convince you otherwise that we've made the right signings. Adam says, hi, Tom. How many players do you think the likes of Southampton could sign from Arsenal? They've got £140 million for promotion and didn't sign too many after big sales last year. Could it be a win-win? They could look at players, of course, like Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson, Emile Smith-Rowe. There were suggestions that Ipswich have got interest in Smith-Rowe and Nketiah, so that could still be one to look out for. But there's lots of scope, of course, for those promoted sides maybe to look into some other potential options for Arsenal. And Fabio Vieira, you never know. Aaron Ramsdale, of course, is another one, although I don't think he necessarily would move to one of those newly promoted sides. He's looking at moving to a bigger side, I think, than that. But things can change during a window to get yourself minutes. Maximir says, speaking of Turkish football, did you see the news that Jose Mourinho has agreed to become Fenerbahce's head coach? I think that was Ozil's old club. It was indeed. Jose has been on a downward spiral since that clash with Ava Carnero. Oh, goodness me, that's going back a fair few years, that story. But he's went to Roma. He won trophies. I think he brought them their first European trophy in goodness knows how long. He went to Spurs, didn't win anything, but no one wins anything at Spurs. And now he sees if he can win something in the Turkish league. I'm interested to see how he gets on. He's not moving to Chelsea, of course. That pretty much confirms that. But we know Enzo Maresca is becoming their head coach already. So it didn't seem that was ever really too likely that Mourinho would go back to Chelsea. I didn't think they were looking at an old coach. I don't think Tuchel was ever going to go back for Lampard, all those. So yeah, let's see how Mourinho does in Turkey. I wish him all the best. I can't stand the guy, but you can't help but respect him for what he does sometimes. So I always enjoy seeing him pick up these crazy trophies here and there. Dylan says, some reports saying Chelsea are looking into Sesko. Do you think if it came down to the play, he'd pick us over them? Mostly listen on Spotify and happy to finally catch a live show. I think so. They spent obviously money on Jackson. They spent money on Nkunku. The expectation, I think, is that Nkunku would probably play more centre forward and Palmer on the right. And, they've got options in other positions as well. So I think he would choose Arsenal over Chelsea. And if you look at the young players that have gone there, only Palmer really is something of a success. So I think that we would have the much better argument to bring him in and pitch him this project that he could eventually be the leading striker at a team that is looking to pick up the biggest trophies in the world on a consistent basis. Big Smoke says, who does Win the Dog go home with on the summer break? So Win the Dog is kind of he's owned by Arsenal, obviously. Sometimes the players look after him. I know that Ben White has looked after him on a number of occasions. I think Kai Havertz has maybe looked after him as well. Some staff members in the club. I think some of the women's team as well. So Win the Dog has lots of homes in addition to just the Arsenal. But yeah, he is looked after by some of the Arsenal players as well. Knowledge says, I had the chocolate cake a few weeks ago, although it was very nice. I wonder what their warm chocolate pudding is like. It might be more. I haven't had that one yet. I haven't had the new one. There's a warm chocolate pudding at Nando's that I do need to try. But the problem, do you find this? Whenever you go somewhere, you're like, I love this thing. It's often when I go for a curry. Like I love biryani. And the only reason I like biryani, to be fair, is I used to have a jalfrezi. And I was like, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to have the biryani. Now I love biryani. So you ever find that like you want to go for your favorites, and if you don't have your favorite because you want to be a bit adventurous and you pick something else, that you end up being disappointed that you didn't have the thing that you know that you love, but you feel like you have to take the risk to try something new. Well, it's kind of like that. Every time I go to Nando's, it's like, I want to try the cheesecake. I want to try the other dessert, but it's so good that I can't ever look back at that and go, I can't believe you didn't have the chocolate cake, mate. What are you doing? What are you doing, mate? Right, so, yeah, I don't know if it's just me, but I certainly struggle in picking new things because I just love picking the favourites. Let's go to... That's probably why I've been married for, as long as I have. Karthik says, where do you stand on Vieira? Would you give him one last chance next season or sell him? It depends on the offers that we get. I'm open to him having another season, but if we get some offers, I think that we need to be open to entertaining them. Gunners Elite says, Tom, I'd rather Sesko over Osimhen because Havertz is my number one. And I'd rather bet in a youngster than have Osimhen look to be our starter. Is that counterproductive? I'm biased, so it's hard to tell. I don't think so. No, I understand why people want Osimhen and think that he would take us forwards, but I understand also why there's people like yourself and me that also are more keen on Arsenal bringing in a younger player that has a higher ceiling potentially we see than these strikers, and that we see that being an option going forwards. Loga says that's a first world problem, Tom. You're right. It absolutely is. It's without a question, but it's context, it's I can't speak differently about my life because of where I am. I'm very fortunate to be where I am. I don't take that for granted for a second, but it is what it is, and certainly we have plenty of listeners from around the world that need as much support as they can get. Mood Point says, how much do you think that we could spend on Osimhen? Would he be interested in not being a starting striker? I think in terms of how much he would cost is that you're looking upwards of £100 million. So there you go. Always thought Win is a girl. Did I say him? Yeah, Win is a girl, Archie. Win the dog is certain. I'm sorry if I said he. I certainly didn't mean to. I did that the first time. I have met Win the dog, and she is, just a great little bundle of joy. Ardy says, Win the dog should also be awarded the best individual of the dressing room for the summer to reward the underrated heroes behind the scenes. Absolutely. Nolly says, that's choice for you, Tom. You will always wonder what the other choice would be like indeed. Absolutely. The grass, though, is not always greener. I'm a real goodness says, I'm jealous of Spuds signing Werner. We missed out there. I'm guessing there's some Schadenfreude there a little bit. Let's go to Jordan says Tom's going to get slated by our African listeners. I mean, we have a lot of African listeners on the channel, and to be fair, I'm extremely appreciative of that, and we try and defend a lot on the channel the African Cup of Nations as well, in particular, because it's an incredibly disparaged tournament that people look upon. I think I saw comments earlier in the show talking about Osimhen and should we sign a player just because they what's the word? They play in the African Cup of Nations, and we shouldn't sign a player because they play in the AFCON. That is not a reason not to sign a player. The tournament comes around once every couple of years, sometimes longer, and it takes place over a few weeks, and we lose a player for a couple of games. And frankly, if you're not good enough to have the depth to cover a player's absence for 2 to 3 games, then you shouldn't have the player. At the end of the day, you should be better at your squad building. So it really bugs me when people say I wouldn't sign somebody because of the AFCON, because it is not a reason not to sign a player whatsoever. Plus, I've got a lot of African family members as well. So I don't see why I would get slated by African listenership at all. Nicholas says, Tom, what is the dream signing that we can make that will get you jumping up and down like a kid on Boxing Day? Much love. Take care. Thanks, Nicholas. What would be the signing? It was funny. Someone was saying to me the other day who my Zoboslai is. If you're a long-time listener of the channel, you'll know that Zoboslai was the guy for a long time that I wanted to see join. And, of course, then he went to Liverpool. Before that, Naby Keita, again, went to Liverpool. Before that, Marco Asensio kind of trailed off a bit despite a really strong start. And then the injury, of course, that he suffered at Real Madrid kind of curtailed his career. And now he's at PSG. Simmons, I see Beak suggests in the chat box. Maybe it would be maybe Simmons. It's tough. I don't think there is a Szoboszlai or a Asensio for me right now. Fofana I like, but again, I don't think it's not of the level that I'm that kind of, I don't use the word obsessed, but you know what I mean? I'm really keen on seeing that player arrive at Arsenal. Xavi Simons probably would be one of the closest. Outside of Simmons, I am struggling. I don't think I have. Not Nico Williams, no. I'm not necessarily as keen on him. Zubamendi, it says Core would be theirs. I don't know. I don't think there is one. Rafael Leao, RD says, great player. I don't think he's going to be on the move to Arsenal, though, this summer. Isak, I suppose, Carthy. You're probably right. Alexander Isak is probably the one. Now I've said his name, I'm going to get bombarded with Newcastle fans in my comment section. Honestly, that's mad. It's like pigeons in Trafalgar Square. You can't escape it. Mention bread and they come. Mention Isak, Newcastle fans will flock to you. So yes, maybe it's Isak is the one for me that would genuinely make me jump for joy. I still don't have the association, the affiliation, the obsessions that I did have with Szoboszlai and Asensio, but he is probably the one that would make me jump for joy the most. Dakarai says, I don't agree with your Osimhen take with Ødegaard and BS7 being Saka, of course. Feeding Osimhen, his numbers would pump up, especially against low mid-block teams. I don't agree. People use this analogy all the time. It never comes to light. You know, the amount of time I hear things like, oh, well, if we'd signed Wilfried Zaha, he'd been playing in a better team, he would have done better numbers. Oh, if we'd have signed X player, Y player, Z player, they'd be doing far better. The reality is that these strikers do move to the Premier League. They do move to better teams. They do make that step up. And their numbers don't necessarily always flourish higher than they were because at Napoli, Osimhen is the talismanic figure. Everything that Napoli does goes through him and Kvaratskhelia, you know. So at the end of the day, he is the emphasis. He is the focal point, the spearhead of that team. And so the idea that a player moves to Arsenal and plays with Ødegaard and Saka and Martinelli and Trossard and Rice and whoever will naturally mean that their numbers will significantly increase. It's not true. It's not always true. It is not always the case that happens. Yeah. So I do get somewhat frustrated at times when people just assume that a player's numbers will go through the roof just because they've moved to a much, much bigger team. Because there are plenty of examples where that turns out not to be the case. So I can't suggest that for any stretch of the imagination that will happen, you know? So, yeah, I would calm somewhat on the argument that those numbers will, of course, go through the roof. I mean, if you look at Doku, for instance, scored 3 goals for Man City in the league this season. He scored 6 for Rennes during the previous season. He improved his assist numbers for sure, but scored half the number of goals. So there's not necessarily a guarantee that just because you play for a better team, it means that you will score more goals or, you know, in that regard. So, yeah, there you go. Maximir says, Tom, as a concerned rival, do you think Pep's announcement to leave end of next season will affect their transfer window? Like how it did maybe for Klopp? As a rival, we'd love it to happen. Of course, I think there's going to be something of an element of uncertainty in certain players. They're going to be looking at signing for City and going, well, I want to play under Pep Guardiola, but he's only going to be there for a season. And then there's somewhat an uncertainty about the future of City. Whereas if you look at Arsenal, the understanding is that you're going to be working under Arteta for the foreseeable future. So there's a guarantee there where there doesn't exist that same guarantee with City. Wuraola says, how far off do you think Mika Biereth is to Benjamin Sesko? We might be shortchanging ourselves by just seeing our neighbours as maybe having the green grass or other grass being greener. I think Sesko is significantly better than Mika Biereth. I think Biereth is a very good striker, especially at a young age, but I think that Sesko is significantly better, is what I would say. And that's why ultimately the level that Biereth is succeeding at is in the Austrian Bundesliga with respect to Sturm Graz and the Austrian League. And with a team that obviously won the title in Austria as well and did fantastically well to break that streak of Red Bull Salzburg. But the level compared to the Bundesliga is significantly different. And, Sesko at the age of 20 and fighting to get into the starting lineup for the second half of the season has done a very, very good job as well. Moo Point says, sorry, Tom, I'm rephrasing my question. Recent Osimhen's dip in form and injury worries, what is the maximum that you are willing to spend on him from a return on investment? 70 to 80 million. I think I could probably justify on Osimhen. I don't think I could justify 100, but 70 to 80 million, I think I could justify spending on Osimhen and having that as an ideal amount of money. Karthik says, I want us to win the league fair and square. I don't want a points deduction if City were to be found guilty of their allegations. Adam says, the grass is only greener where Arteta chooses to water it. I love that. Ben says, actually, I don't know. Send Biereth to Leipzig for a season. He might do something. You never know. We don't know, but we can only work off our frame of reference, at the moment in time, can't we? So it's difficult to know if Biereth would. But from what I've seen of both of them, I think that, Sesko looks the better player right now. Evie says, Tom, with the comments on Biereth, should we not loan him to Leipzig as part of a deal for Sesko? He's only got a year left on his contract at Arsenal. So if you are going to loan him again, you are going to have to sign him up to a brand new contract with Arsenal, which is obviously difficult, I think, because Mika Biereth was open to leaving permanently. I think he was open to leaving permanently in January. And I think he only has a year left. So it's difficult with Biereth to loan him again. I think that there's interest from championship sides. There's interest from Europe. I don't think we'll struggle for interest in Biereth. I think we will sell him, but we need to look and get as much money as we can from him. I don't think it's going to be huge sums of money. I don't think it even be necessarily more than £10 million. But, we need to look at trying to maximise that deal as much as we can. Jay says, thoughts on Arsenal getting Sorloth. He's 28, got that Norwegian connection with Odegaard. He's a top La Liga goal scorer as well. I think he's found his level with Villarreal, Jay. I'm not sure that he's the right player, right age profile for Arsenal to go for necessarily. I think Arsenal, if they're looking to bring in a striker, it needs to be one that has a ceiling that's either higher than what we have or has a future ceiling higher than what we have and raises the floor as well. And Sesko raises the floor and has the ability to potentially raise the ceiling of the club as well moving forward too. So that's always something I'm looking at as a preference for Arsenal right now. Of course, there's hi Tom. Who is your moments player that we need in terms of a magician to sort out those stalemate situations? A good question, because obviously we don't necessarily have enough of that. We don't have enough of a match winner, if you like. I think Odegaard can be that player. I think Saka can be that player, of course. We know Rice can even be that player with the amount of times he's popped up with big goals at Chelsea, against Man United, against Luton. He's done those big moments. But we do need someone else, and it's difficult to find that because those players tend to be the world-class talents. Trossard, you're right, Amberley is potentially that player for us as well. He's popped up in huge moments for us. So, but do we have that player that we can guarantee is going to grab you that goal and change a game state out of nothing? Maybe Havertz can be that player. Maybe some of the future kids coming through, Nwaneri can be that player. But if you're looking at signing them, they are very, 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 very hard to find. And I don't necessarily think there is one out there at the moment that stands out to me and says, yeah, that could be Isak, I guess. But even then, still, I'm not looking at him as a world-class player. Yeah, I'm looking at him as a top striker, but hasn't established himself enough to say that he's world-class. But certainly has got world-class potential. But I don't see that player. I don't see if that player is out there for us at the moment. So let's see if indeed that turns out to be the case, and we can find them or create them, because creating them is I think easier than signing them. Amin says, hi Tom, there's more Zinchenko links to Bayern. Does that confirm it's legit? Would you take Ferdi Kaliolu as a replacement technical? As far as I'm aware, the Kaliolu thing is, as I said before, it's not as advanced as what's been suggested. There is interest, but it's not as advanced. Zinchenko, the interest in Bayern is real. I've said that before on the channel. They're monitoring the situation. They're not necessarily, it's not like they're going to put a bid in yet or make an offer yet. They could, but it's just monitoring that situation, I think, at the moment. It makes sense with the links to company now being there. So a move like that does make quite a lot of sense. But it's just a monitoring situation at the moment. If that changes, of course, we'll talk about it and we'll discuss it. But I don't think that it's one that I don't think we're going to see loads of movement in the market too early on. I think because of the Copa America, because of the European Championships, that is going to delay a lot of the transfer business, I think, into late July, August time. So you're going to have to sit on your hands for a bit, I'm afraid, but we'll continue to discuss it. We'll continue to tackle it as best we can. Darren says Isak is overrated. Tricky to think that he's overrated, considering he's one of only 3 players who scored 20 Premier League goals last season, of course, but everyone's entitled to their opinion. Rob says predictions, Champions League final, 1-1 Dortmund on penalties. Havertz, 25 goals and assists if he's our number 1 striker next season. Can't bench Havertz after half of last season. Sesko as a second striker rotation, having 2 6'4" forwards is going to be very threatening for the opposition. Champions League final tonight, Borussia Dortmund against Real Madrid. Come on, Dortmund. I want to see a story. I want to see a magic. I really do. And I hope that Dortmund can do it. But fair play to Jude Bellingham and Real Madrid and Carlo Ancelotti, of course, if they pick up another Champions League title. It's going to be fun. Looking forward to it. Thank you for listening. Have a fantastic day. Enjoy your Saturday. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. Please do drop a like on the video if you could, and I would be ever so grateful for that if you could indeed do so. So I will see you all tomorrow morning to round off, of course, that Champions League final and round up any extra Arsenal news that crops up in the next 24 hours. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you then. And as always, up the Arsenal.